Good afternoon. Welcome to Cancer Research Malaysia's Breast Cancer Risk Webinar, conducted in collaboration with our friends and supporters at Yayasan PETRONAS. My name is Gurpreet and I'm your host, and we have an exciting sequence of events lined up for all of you here today. But before we get started, we're just going to take a few moments to watch this short video. So sit back, relax, get comfortable, and we'll get started here shortly.
In the last 5 years, more than 100,000 Malaysians have contracted cancer. It is now the fourth most common cause of death in Malaysia. In order to improve our survival rate, we need to better understand the factors that cause cancer and find ways to curb and control it. Research is key.
For some cancers, they're just much more common in the Asian population. Our lifestyle factors, our diet, our reproductive factors are all different. And because of our immune profile is different, it might also mean that our response to treatment is different. So unless we study these comprehensively, we don't know whether the treatments that we use are necessarily the best possible ones that we can use for Asian patients.
Through research work, we can better understand the factors behind the rise of the disease. At the same time, we find ways to improve it, and whilst increasing the survival rate.
We will be able to perform much better analysis and also have access to better infrastructure, which would speed up our research. At CRM, we have the largest collection of breast cancer genome in Asia.
Fundamental building blocks to help us understand what goes wrong in these cancers and how do we cure these cancers more effectively. We now have 23 hospitals that are able to provide genetic counseling and genetic testing services. There's so much that we have already done, but there's so much more that we can do.
With better research, advances in treatment, growing awareness, and early detection, we can reverse cancer.
Hi there, good afternoon everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you once again. We have close to 120 participants joining us today from various locations, and we are just super excited that you're here with us this afternoon. You know, learning and growing in our understanding of different subject matters is an exciting endeavor, and this fasting month provides us a unique opportunity to leverage our lunch break for this particular purpose. To all our Muslim friends, selamat berpuasa, and we are glad that you're here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And for those of us that are not fasting, thank you also for tuning in and for choosing to be here with us for Cancer Research Malaysia's webinar on breast cancer risk in collaboration with Yayasan PETRONAS. My name is Gurpreet and I'm the Engagement Manager here at Cancer Research Malaysia, a non-profit organization saving lives through impactful research, and I will be your host this afternoon. Today, we have the privilege of having CEO of Yayasan PETRONAS, Puan Nelly Francis Shariah, along with the CSO or Chief Scientific Officer of Cancer Research Malaysia, Datin Paduka Dr. Hwang, both of whom will be sharing some remarks and insights with us today. Here at Cancer Research Malaysia, the work that we do is really fully funded by donation and research grants. And the recognition and support that we've received from Yayasan PETRONAS means a whole lot to us because it really enables us to carry out our mission and to do impactful research towards a future that is free of the fear of cancer. Now, before we get into the heart of what we'll be talking about today, allow me just to share some details of what this afternoon is going to look like, just so all of us are informed and aligned. We will start with some welcoming remarks by the CEO of Yayasan PETRONAS, Puan Nelly, followed by a keynote presentation by Professor Dr. Teo. We will then move to a Q&A session where your questions will be addressed and subsequently bring our time this afternoon to a close right about the 1 hour mark or so. Just an additional note, as you experience and hear from our speakers today, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can do so by clicking on the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like now to invite Puan Nelly Francis Shariah, CEO of Yayasan PETRONAS, to say a few opening words. Puan Nelly, dipersilakan.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Datin Paduka, Dr. Teo, Dr. Aishah, Ms. Tiara, and our CRM partners, salam sejahtera and good afternoon. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me to be part of today's meaningful occasion. It is great to see that we are all coming together to play our parts in combating cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, recently the University of Cambridge released the world's largest study on genes that may cause increased risk to breast cancer. A significant part of ASEAN research for this Study was led by researchers from Cancer Research Malaysia, University Malaya, Subang Medical Center, and 7 hospitals in Singapore. This milestone is a huge achievement for cancer research worldwide and in Asia. And as quoted by Anton Chekhov, knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice. Therefore, our webinar today plays an important part in putting the knowledge received from this study to good use for the benefit of us all, which is why I am more than glad to see that there is more awareness being done among us for cancer prevention and early diagnosis as we work together as a community to fight the disease. Now, I know there may be some of us here who have had their share of experience with cancer, be it with a relative, a friend, or a colleague. This is why sessions like this are crucial, so that we can all come together, equip ourselves with information and learn how best we can help our friends and family to be more aware and take early action. Knowing how this disease affects us is one thing, but taking action to get ourselves screened and passing on the information to another could really be life-saving. Ladies and gentlemen, the finding of this study is essential as previous research has mostly just focused on European population. It will enable doctors, clinicians, companies to better serve patients and their family by offering the right genetic test, for example, on the right set of genes that are at risk of breast cancer. An estimated 60% of cancer among patients in Malaysia were only diagnosed during the later stages of the disease at stage 3 and stage 4. It is believed that this is due to the lack of awareness on the signs, symptoms, and lack in health-seeking behavior among the public. ASEAN genetics is an area that requires more investigation, which is why continuous research into this will help to improve the patient's survival chances and treatments, giving hope to those suffering from cancer and their loved ones. We won't be able to act as accurately without much knowledge of an issue. A thorough research will help us make better decisions as they are driven by data and we receive from these studies. This will reduce the unknown and allow for more precise action to be taken and will enable us to contribute to the well-being of more Malaysians as well as benefit millions others who are suffering from the disease. Ladies and gentlemen, the statistics on the rate of cancer today is worrisome. Just last year, the total number of cancer cases among females was almost touching 4.5 million, and over 1 million of them were categorized as breast cancer. In the next 5 years, it is expected that around 45 million of people in Asia will be diagnosed with cancer, and if there is no effort put in towards researching the cancer in ASEAN's and health screenings for early detection, we are narrowing our chance of survival. Malaysia, for instance, has the lowest survival rates for breast cancer in the Asia-Pacific region because about 50% of patients seek treatment at stage 3 and 4 when the disease is much harder to treat. This reminds me of a story of how in July 2007, Robin Roberts, who is an anchor for Good Morning America, was doing a self-examination, and she immediately had an instinct. She said it was because she was so familiar with her body that when she felt the lumps, she knew this one felt different, and she was right. If she hadn't been doing self-exams, she would have never known. And who would have known that Robin's journey with cancer would help someone else 7 years later, as Emmy Robach, another news anchor from Good Morning America, was persuaded to do a mammogram in a mobile health truck in the middle of Times Square on live television with an audience of 5 million people, just to get the word out that women should go and get their mammograms done. Initially, Emmy didn't want to do it as she was only 40 and she didn't have any family history with cancer. But Robin said something to her that would change her life. She said, "I can pretty much guarantee it will save a life." And indeed, she was right. That mammogram turned out to be life-changing for Emmy because it was revealed very unexpectedly that she had multiple growths and lumps which required double mastectomy. Robin became her lifesaver. That wasn't a day even. There wasn't a day even while Emmy was undergoing chemotherapy that she wasn't grateful for a second chance in life. And each one of us could play that role too. Today is a good time to be that beacon and offer this gift of information and encouragement to someone else. Ladies and gentlemen, I am glad that PETRONAS and now Yayasan PETRONAS has continued to support Cancer Research Malaysia to pursue research which is relevant to ASEAN's so we can better understand factors that contribute to the effective treatment of this disease. This is aligned to our mission of enriching lives for Malaysia for a sustainable future. With this achievement, I can say we are definitely eager to see more of the groundbreaking research which can improve the quality of life and longevity of our loved ones in the future. I am also reminding myself, as I say, we should continue to educate and equip ourselves with information of this disease, including for the early detection of cancer, which, if diagnosed early, is more likely to be treated successfully. Once again, I would like to express my appreciation to everyone for being here today. I hope we would all learn something from this fruitful session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Puan Nelly, for the brief introduction and the warm welcome. I would like now to invite our keynote speaker, Datin Paduka, Dr. Teo Su Hwang, to share about our main topic today, Am I at Risk of Breast Cancer? Datin Paduka is the award-winning scientist. She founded Cancer Research Malaysia back in 2001 and has since won numerous awards, including the Wellcome Trust Collaborative Science Award and many more. She was also awarded the Honorary Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Professor Dr. Teo.
Thank you very much, Goprit, for that introduction. And I wasn't intending to really say this, but this is the first time I've heard Puan Nelly speak, being quite new to Yayasan PETRONAS. And I'm absolutely blown away. I'm very, very grateful for her comments and her introductory statement. I think there are three key messages that I really heard very loud and clear from Puan Nelly. One is that Malaysians really need to stand up to cancer. And there's a lot more that we can do to increase the awareness for cancer. And things that we can do for ourselves, as well as things that we can do for our loved ones in terms of knowing what are the risk factors, knowing what our body is like, and going for screening when it's appropriate for us. I think the second key message, which I'm really heartened to hear, is that more and more individuals are surviving the disease, and actually with early detection and better access to treatment, we can really make a difference. And the third key message is really like corporate partners like Yayasan PETRONAS jumping in the bandwagon, understanding what we need to do in terms of awareness, but also in understanding that there are gaps in research that local organizations can continue to fill is absolutely critical if we're not only going to be able to provide an umbrella over the heads of people who are suffering today, but also find better ways of creating more umbrellas, creating ways of shifting the clouds so that more people can survive the disease. Thank you, Puan Nelly, for your wonderful introductory remarks. And thank you to everyone in the participation group for attending and making time during your lunch hour or during your extra hour during the Pasar month to be able to attend this session and join us in the fight against cancer. Can I have my first slide, please? So the first thing I would really like everyone to remember is the good news is that there have been massive improvements in survival, such that 9 out of 10 breast cancer patients already can survive the disease. So this is in sharp contrast with from a long time ago. So 50 years ago, only 1 in 4 cancer patients would survive 10 years. And today, only 1 in 2 would survive 10 years. But in some countries around the world, 9 out of 10 breast cancer patients already survive the disease because of the investment in research and the massive improvements in survival. This has also come about because of early detection of the disease and because many countries have put in place awareness programs as well as screening programs that enable us to detect disease rather than when it's very large and has metastasized to other parts of the body at an earlier stage when it's more likely to be curable. Next slide, please. But the bad news is that this year alone, more than 2 million women around the world are going to be diagnosed with the disease. And more or less 1 woman somewhere in the world is going to die of breast cancer every minute. So every minute that we are here, 1 person will die of breast cancer somewhere in the world. So this remains a major challenge for us to be able to tackle. and something that we need to be able to raise awareness of. It's the most common cancer in the majority of countries around the world, and in Malaysia, it accounts for 1 in 3 cancers among women and 1 in 5 cancers overall. It is by far the most common cancer. Next slide, please. The bad news as well is that as an individual woman, every woman is at risk. It doesn't matter whether you have a family member that's affected by the disease or you have none, whether you have a best friend affected, whether you have children or not. Unfortunately, the reality is every woman is at risk. So this is a message that we need to put out there for every man and woman to be aware of. And I make it very clear, every man and woman needs to be aware of. And the reason why men need to be aware is because very often men are the ones who motivate their wives or their friends and so on, or their mothers or their daughters to go for screening, give them the energy, the power and the courage to be able to go for screening and take up the screening that's relevant for them. But in addition, it's also very, very much found that when men are behind the support of a woman, the women are more likely to not just attend screening, but also go through with the treatment options. Next slide, please. So this is the top 3 things that you can do to reduce your risk. And these are risk factors that we know a lot about, and we've known them for more than 20 years. And it's a practice that we should really make sure that we're able to raise awareness in the public. So if you can, have children as early as possible and breastfeed for as long as possible, because these hormonal factors and reproductive factors contribute significantly to whether you have a high risk of disease or a low risk of disease. This by far accounts for a lot of the reasons why our grandmothers had lower risk of disease lower risk of breast cancer compared to our generation, and our children's generation will actually have a higher risk of disease than our generation. But you might ask, well, a lot of breast cancer patients may already have had children and they already breastfeed, but they still get breast cancer. And why is that the case? That's because we now know that breast cancer is not caused by a single factor. And there are many factors that cause an increased risk to breast cancer. The second thing that we need to know is exercise, exercise, exercise. And the reason why I've put it 3 times is because the amount that you exercise influences your age at which you start having periods. And therefore, exercise at childhood for our children are really important in order to be able to reduce the risk of cancer later on in life. Exercising during the most productive times in our life when we're having children has also been shown to influence our hormonal balance and influence our risk to disease. But exercise at the postmenopausal phase is when it's the most important. So exercise in postmenopausal women has been strongly associated with reductions in risk to postmenopausal breast cancer. And postmenopausal breast cancer is what is increasing rapidly in our population. And number 3 is, unfortunately, as we grow older and we go through menopause, women are more likely to gain weight during menopause. And it's been very strong evidence to show that weight gain post-menopause is associated with an increased risk to breast cancer. So the top 3 things that you can do to reduce your risk is have children as early as possible and breastfeed for as long as you can, to exercise, and to avoid weight gain during menopause. Next slide, please. Here are the top 3 other risk factors that are associated with breast cancer risk that unfortunately, no matter what we can do, we can't change. Growing older is associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. This basically means that in Malaysia, for example, the average age of being diagnosed with breast cancer is now in somewhere between 45 and 55. There are women that get it in their 80s, and there are women that get it in their 20s. There are much fewer than women in the 45 to 60 years age group. The second thing that we can't change is the nature of our breast itself. So we now know that there are features of our breast that make some individuals more likely to develop breast cancer compared to others. And those features may arise because of the hormones that we're exposed to. So for example, if you take hormone replacement therapy, that actually changes some of the features in your breast that we call mammographic density in a way that commensurates with your risk to cancer. If you take some kind of chemoprevention agents, for example, that reduces or that changes the features of your breast, commensurating with a reduction in risk to breast cancer. But unfortunately, there are many genetic determinants for the features of your breast, and those are things that we can't change. But those are information that we can take forward that helps us customize the appropriate screening for women out there. And finally, no matter what we do, You know, we can't choose our genes, we can't choose the families that we're born into, and the cancers that occur within our families may be related in large part to the genes that we inherit within families, and we can't change those genetic elements. So I'm sure most of you have, seen a lot of movies and science fiction movies, and in the future, perhaps there are ways in which we can use CRISPR technology and so on to be able to change our genes. But for now, this is not yet a reality, and therefore genes and cancers that occur in your family are not something that you can change. So you look at this and it sounds rather depressing, right? That these are important risk factors, but unfortunately things that we cannot change. Next slide, please. But even though we can't change all of these, we can use that information to be able to help ourselves. So one message that we should make it very clear is that one size does not fit all. So in the same way that we all don't wear the same size t-shirts, we also don't have the same risks. We have not inherited the same risk of breast cancer from our parents, not just from our mothers, but also from our fathers. So some individuals just inherit a constellation of genetic elements that put them at higher risk of breast cancer. I put it here in pink, and there are very few of those individuals in the population. Probably about 2% of individuals are at extremely high risk of breast cancer, similar to Angelina Jolie. But the other side of the spectrum, there are few individuals that have extremely low risk of developing the disease, and they're what we call very low risk individuals. And again, that's about 5 to 10% of the population are extremely low risk. The most of us are somewhere in the middle, where we have moderate or average risk of developing breast cancer. And what we need to know is what can we do to reduce our risk further, and what screening is appropriate to us so that we can detect cancer at an early stage and hopefully have it cured as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. But the challenge is that in order to be able to know whether someone is at high risk or at low risk, we need to be able to understand their genetics. And genetic research, unfortunately, has largely been conducted in high-income countries, and the majority of these high-income countries are located in the European population or the Caucasian population. So I find this an atrocity, that even though Asians make up 50% of the world's population, 58% of the deaths due to cancer, we only make up 10% of the genetics research, 10% of the genomics research. What does that mean? That means that a lot of our applications, a lot of the use of this type of information, we don't actually know whether it will apply appropriately in the Asian population, because we simply don't have enough information on the Asian population. So Cancer Research Malaysia was set up by Tan Sri Tunku Ahmad Yahya, Puan Dr. Aishah, and they invited me as a young researcher from the University of Cambridge to come back and try and change this for Malaysia, change the landscape so that Asians can make up more of this research. Next slide, please. And we've done exactly that. So there have been a couple of major studies that have been published in the past year, made possible because we have core donors such as Yayasan Samdavi that pays for our salaries, Yayasan PETRONAS that pays for our laboratory and our infrastructure, and many other donors that have come forward to fund individual projects. And many are members of the public who have come forward to fund our individual projects by buying lipstick with Estee Lauder, or taking part in our awareness campaigns, in our runs, our Reverse Cancer Day run, which completed recently, or just being a donor for our programs that enables us to make sure that the research for Asians has now gone from genetics from 2% to now 15%, and Malaysia now hosts the largest genomic map of Asian breast cancers in the world. And this type of research is helping us to bring new treatment options for Asian patients. So what I want to do today in the next few slides is just show you 3 results that have come out from our latest paper, which we're very gratified that it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So what is the New England Journal of Medicine? Where is New England in the first place? Well, in the world of medical research, there are many different qualities of research. And if you like, just like there are many different qualities of cars, this is the Bentley of all scientific journals. So in the New England Journal of Medicine, we were able to publish the largest global study of breast cancer risk or breast cancer genes. And there were 3 main conclusions that we found. Out of the 22,000 human genes, and that's right, out of the 22,000 human genes that exist in each one of us, we found that there were only 12 that are associated with breast cancer genes, breast cancer risk. So these 12 genes we can now test for in every individual, and by identifying the individuals that have an altered version of these genes, we can identify those individuals that are at higher risk of breast cancer. So this enables families to understand why did cancer occur in my family? Why did it occur in my mother and my aunt? And will it also occur in me? Previously, we were only able to test 2 genes, BRCA1 and BRCA2. BRCA1, of course, was made famous by Angelina Jolie, but now we're able to know many other genes that are associated with breast cancer risk, and this opens the door to enable us to be able to help families understand why cancer occurs in their family and what can we do about it. Next slide, please. The second big discovery that we made is that some of these genes increase many types of breast cancer and others only increase the risk of certain types of breast cancer. Wow, I didn't know that there are many different types of breast cancer to begin with, right? So isn't a breast tissue and therefore breast cancer is just one type? Well, actually genetics, if you look at cancer under a microscope, you can already see some differences in the cell shapes of the different types of cancer. But when you start to do genetics, things that the eyes cannot see, that you cannot even see under a microscope, we now know that there are up to 10 different types of breast cancer. And each of these types of breast cancer not only require a different treatment, they also have a different response. So what we found from these genetic studies is that some of the genes that we inherit are associated, like BRCA1, to the hormone receptor negative type of disease, and some of the chemoprevention agents may not be so effective in these hormone receptor negative type of breast cancers. But other types of genes may be associated with other types of cancers, so particularly the hormone receptor positive type of cancers, and our prevention strategies may be targeted towards those types altogether. So this research has enabled us to open up the doors and figure out how do we prevent more cancers in the future. How can we use our understanding of the function of these genes to find better ways of not just curing the disease, but potentially preventing the disease in the future. Next slide, please. And that's exactly what the next steps are. So the third thing that we found, and this was really made possible because of the contribution of the Asian component, is to understand that the lifestyle factors can influence a risk of breast cancer among women with altered genes. So very often, women would ask, if I have a BRCA gene, I'm going to get breast cancer and die. That's it. That's the end of me. And in that kind of case, why would I want to know that information? Hardly. We now know that lifestyle factors can significantly alter whether even a BRCA carrier will develop the disease or not. Yes, most BRCA carriers will have a higher risk of developing the disease, but we find many Asian families have BRCA carriers in their 80s. And we've done a lot of studies where we've gone out to interview these women and figured out why is it that Asian women live on to their ripe old age of 80s and so on without ever developing breast cancer, even though they're BRCA carriers. So we now know that lifestyle factors such as the reproductive factors, such as exercise, such as weight gain post-menopause, not only influence the risk of disease among individuals that don't have altered genes, they also influence the risk among women that have altered genes. And because we now know a lot more of the genetic elements associated with risk to cancer, we can now begin to tailor prevention strategies and screening strategies according to individual risk factors. So again, going back to the message that one size may not fit all. Next slide, please. So I'm coming to the end of my talk, but I think the message and the take-home message was articulated extremely well by Puan Nelly. That with early detection and the right treatment, even women with altered genes can live a normal life to a ripe old age. And all women, all breast cancer patients, we hope to be able to work towards a future where breast cancer is indeed a disease that we can all survive. Today, in some high-income countries, it's already 9 in 10, and we hope to be able to continue to improve that by understanding what are the remaining differences or the subtypes of disease that have a poor outcome, and what can we do to improve treatment options for those women, and for all of us to be able to work out how can we prevent the disease more effectively from happening, targeting in particular the individuals at moderate and at high risk. Next slide, please. So this is my take-home message. Unfortunately, the sad news is that everyone is at risk of breast cancer. Every woman is at risk of breast cancer. Men have a lower risk, but that risk exists. Survival is improving all of the time because of medical research. And ultimately, Asian lives matter. It's important that we do this research right here in Asia so that the advances in medical research can be brought to bear to improve outcome for you as well as for me. Thank you very much again for attending this, and thank you very much for Yayasan PETRONAS for your support and making the research that we do possible, as well as this webinar possible today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Teo, for that insightful presentation. We also want to express our deepest thanks to all of our donors that has helped us to carry on this journey for the last 20 years, including Yayasan Dabi, Scientex, Estee Lauder, and the likes. We trust that all of you have also gotten a better understanding of some of the risks that are associated with breast cancer and the work that Cancer Research Malaysia does in order to mitigate this risk, supported by our supporters and champions of our work here, folks like Yayasan PETRONAS. So thank you once again for your support. We are now going to move into our Q&A session. I would like to invite all our panelists to take center stage and unmute your mics. Alongside Puan, Nelly, and Dr. Teo, Professor Teo, we also have with us two additional panelists. First, we have Professor Dr. Nur Aishah Muhammad Taib, who is the Director of the University of Malaya Cancer Research Institute and a Senior Consultant Breast Surgeon at UMMC. She's also a well-published researcher and has done collaborations with Cancer Research Malaysia since 2003. She actually also is dedicated to a clinic where she manages cancer risk for individuals predisposed to inherited cancer. Secondly, we have Tiara Hassan. Tiara is an associate genetic counselor recognized by the Human Genetic Society of Australasia board. She has been with Cancer Research Malaysia for the last 7 years and is actively involved in the development of decision aids and assists patients and family members in making decisions about genetic testing. As for the audience, feel free to continue to ask your question in the Q&A box. If there's any particular questions that you would like addressed, please upvote them by clicking on the thumbs up button or the like button that you see on the bottom of those questions in order to move them up in terms of priority. In this segment, what I'll do is I'll read the question asked by the audience, I'll direct them to the panelists, and then the subject matter experts will respond accordingly. Panelists, when you're ready, you can hold your thumbs up and we will get started accordingly. All right, so let's get started with our Q&A. The first question is addressed for Puan Nelly. And the question says, thank you for this talk. I just wanted to know that in addition to supporting Cancer Research Malaysia, what other efforts has Yayasan PETRONAS done for cancer?
Thank you, Gurpreet, and thank you for the question. Yayasan PETRONAS supports healthcare programs because we believe social progress can only be achieved by a healthy community. Other than CRM, there are also other efforts that we have done pertaining to cancer. To start with, in 2013, we showed our support towards breast cancer awareness by lighting up PETRONAS Twin Towers in pink. PETRONAS has continued to be active in promoting awareness of the disease, including fundraising through the annual Orchid Run and Ride since 2015, and all of the proceeds we received from it are contributed to MAGNA. In fact, in 2018, the annual run successfully raised 400,000, which surpassed the target of 250,000, and the donation was distributed among several beneficiaries, including Breast Cancer Welfare Association Malaysia. In 2018 as well, we hosted World Cancer Congress in Kuala Lumpur Convention Center, which was attended by more than 2,600 cancer delegates from 120 countries. And recently, we did a simple survey and spoke to nearly 70 Malaysians to get their views about the importance of research in cancer, especially among ASEANs. Currently, we would host talks for employees on cancer, visiting cancer patients, and donating to cancer support groups such as Hospital KL, and of course CRM. And we are also working on something with HUKM as well. But we will continue to support this fight against cancer and help to spread awareness. In addition to that, we will also review outcomes of our efforts to better show our support towards the course for future activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly, for just responding to that question. I think I find it quite fascinating to see the amount and the depth to which that Yayasan PETRONAS has gone to really support this effort, not just here at Cancer Research Malaysia, but also across different players in the segment to tackle this issue of cancer localized to the Asian or Malaysian segment. So thank you for sharing. I have the following question. I will address this to Prof. Su. Prof. Su, there's a question here that says, how effective is personalized medicine or treatment in treating breast cancer? What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, Gurpreet, you and I are clearly on the same page because I was furiously typing an answer to that question just as you asked it. So clearly we're sending brainwaves to each other. So jokes aside, it's really important to note that what is precision medicine, right? So in the past, we used to give women only 3 options. 1, you have surgery, you have radiotherapy, or you have chemotherapy. So you cut it out, you zap it out, or you give chemotherapy, you poison it so that you can go after the cancer cells. They may have escaped the breast to other parts of the body that you can't see, and that's why we give chemotherapy. But what we now know is that a lot of the chemotherapy that was given initially was actually targeting any cell that is dividing, and therefore it's got a lot of side effects. And with time, because of our understanding of how cancers develop and what are the genes that drive the development of the cancer, we're able to develop targeted therapy that is based on understanding of what gene has gone wrong in the cancer cells and what drug can we develop that hits that target, that particular gene that has gone wrong, enabling us to kill only the cancer cells without having the side effects on all of the other normal cells. And this is one aspect of precision medicine, understanding what has gone wrong within a particular patient's cancer and choosing the right treatment for that particular patient. If you have that genetic...
Professor, are you there? Okay, yes, we are experiencing some technical difficulties. I think if Prof. Teo doesn't show up, I think we'll just continue on with the next question. So apologies on our behalf for that. The next question is directed to Professor Dr. Nur Aishah. There's a question here that wants to know about mammograms in women. How frequently should mammograms be done? Any thoughts on that, Prof. Aishah?
I think, thank you, Gurpreet. This is a very common question, and I think the first thing a woman needs to know is her risk. So as what Prof. Teo mentioned earlier, we are looking at multiple risk factors, but I think most commonly for the woman is only her gender and her age. Okay, unless you have other types of risk factors like family history and all that. So if you have like a general sort of risk, then the mammogram screening should really start at the age of 50 to 74. And it should be done every 2 years. You know, a lot of people have the misconception that once you do it, that's enough. But unfortunately, things change over the years. So you need to do it regularly every 2 years. And these are for women who have no symptoms at all. That is why we call this screening mammograms. Okay. In younger women, if you have other risk factors, for example, family history, or even carrying the genetics or the genes, like the BRCA1 gene, for example, then the screening may be slightly different in that there would be additional imaging that can be done. For example, the MRI. I also noticed in one of the questions, there was a question about tumor markers, right? So tumor markers are blood tests like CA153, right? CA125. These tests are not suitable for screening. They do not detect cancer at an early stage. And even someone who has cancer may have a low tumor marker level. So tumor markers is not a form of screening and should not be used for screening for breast cancer. And a lot of women who are in their 40s may actually opt to do screening mammogram also. They can do it also every 2 years if they have no other risk factors. So I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof, for answering that question. We'll move on now for Tiara. There's a question for you here. Is it advisable to do pre-cancer genetic screening and when should that be administered, or when should we go that route?
Okay, so for cancer genetics, genetic testing is usually recommended for either healthy individuals or patients who develop cancer at a very young age or have a close family members affected by a certain cluster of cancers. So we're talking about breast, ovarian, prostate, or pancreatic cancer, because the likelihood of carrying a faulty genes can be associated with these genes. In terms of when, like I mentioned, it could be done early, but I think essentially what is important is that please access these services through either your health professional or talk to us as genetic counselors, so we can guide you through deciding or choosing the right test for the right purpose.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tiara, for responding to that. Welcome back, Prof. Su. I see you're back here with us. There's a question here also on the cancer markers. I think Dr. Aishah has answered that. What about doing cancer markers for breast cancer? What are your thoughts on that, Prof. Su?
Yeah, maybe I should finish the answer that I was midway answering just
right,
now.
that works too.
Ready to kind of say that for some types of breast cancer, because we know the genes, the outcome for the disease has changed significantly. For HER2 positive disease, it used to be one of the most aggressive disease with the most poor outcome, the worst possible outcome. But now HER2 positive disease patients who have access to HER2 targeted therapy actually have the best survival, and so much so that it's now changed completely, turned around what that outcome is. So to answer the question about what is the impact of precision medicine on survival, it's had a massive impact on giving more opportunities and improved survival for a large number of individuals. So even for BRCA, for example, a gene that we know is associated with risk to breast cancer, there's now development of new therapies that are specifically for individuals or tumors that have alterations in the BRCA gene, such that this type of new therapy only works for breast, ovarian, prostate cancer patients that have this genetic alteration. So I really think that the way of the future is to be able to understand what are the genetic alterations that take place in a specific cancer, and how can we develop more effective therapies for those patients. Of course, the major challenge is one of cost, because many of the therapies are currently beyond the affordability of the majority of low and middle income countries, and just trying to use charitable funding to be able to support every single patient is not sustainable. So governments are trying to grapple with how do we ensure that all of the advances in medical research can be brought to bear to help all patients equitably, and so that we can save more lives. And that's such a thorny issue. It will require many more discussions and webinars to be able to address that one.
Thank you, Prof. Teo, for answering that question. Prof. Dr. Noor Aishah, there's another question here that I think is quite interesting. It says here, I have seen quite a number of ladies at the age of 36 discovering breast cancer and then passing away at about 40 years old or so. Is there a particular reason why this happens? And which type of breast cancer is the most difficult to treat, even at stage 2?
Okay, I think first of all, I think breast cancer, as what Prof. Su mentioned, is more common in the older women, but you can get cancer in a younger woman. So, and we've done a study to show that, below the numbers of patients that we have is only about 10-15% of the total numbers, okay? 30, but of course, 30 and above is something that we look out actively when we have women presenting with breast cancer. Okay. They may turn up quite late at the presentation. They may come with very large tumors. They may have a lot of other issues coming forward, right? Maybe they're a bit shy to see doctors and so forth, right? Okay. So that's one point. That means they may delay their presentation. So I would say for any woman at any age, if you have a breast lump, and that is why being aware of your breast, doing your breast self-examination every month can be really helpful in detecting these small lumps. Because remember, breast cancer stage 1 meter and below yourself, really. Okay, you can also clean see your practitioner doctor to have an examination every year to make sure you do not have lumps. Okay, so detecting it early could mean just presenting early when you have a symptom. And this is another thing about healthcare providers may also delay diagnosis because they think when you're young, it is unlikely to be cancer and hence do not complete the triple assessment. So anyone with a breast lump requires an examination by the doctor, getting to know your risk factors, and further to that, you will need some form of imaging. Usually in a young woman, less than 35 years old, it would be an ultrasound of the breast. And if you're 35 and above, it will be an additional mammogram on top of that, okay? And the last one is the biopsy. So this triple assessment can make a diagnosis. The accuracy can go as high as 99%. So I think do not, if someone tells you, oh, your lump is mobile, hence you don't have to have any further checks, better go and see a breast surgeon because you need to properly investigate that lump. Okay, but I have to, put in a word of caution here because you might get a lot of young women stressed out. Most breast lumps are actually benign, So if we see like maybe we see about 30 in a week in our clinic, in breast clinic, we probably only find 1 or 2 of them who have actually got cancer when they're young, okay? All right. But when you're older, when you're above 35, especially above 40, whenever you have a breast lump, go and get it checked because it could be cancer. So it's really about presenting early when you are young. There is no real screening. That means when you have no symptoms and you feel that, you want to go for checkups, there's no factors like the strong family history that we discussed earlier, okay? Just to add on, a lot of young women do a lot of this ultrasound screening. And I have to say, Malaysia, we are so commercialized in our healthcare that there is a lot of ultrasound screening being done in the population. This has a lot of impact on young women because once you detect an abnormality on ultrasound, and I have to say, you will find something on an ultrasound, but most of it is benign, you may not get insurance coverage for a few years because you have to wait until the cooling off period of that pre-existing condition. So a lot of women cannot get proper breast cancer coverage during that time. Okay, so I would suggest don't simply go out and do ultrasound screening. You may find yourself without insurance. Okay, and you may find yourself being stressed out because you've got to come back every 6 months for a repeat ultrasound. Okay, so that's my message for young women. If you have a lump, if you have an abnormality in the breast, if you're worried, see a doctor. And I think breast surgeons are quite equipped, and there are quite a number of breast surgeons, especially around the Klang Valley, also around the country. So the diagnosticians for breast cancer are general surgeons and breast surgeons, and they are not gynecologists. Okay, so that's the other fallacy I think a lot of people have problems with. They end up going to see their gynae, and sometimes gynae do not refer on and may find some issues about making an accurate diagnosis. Okay, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was super helpful, Prof, and thank you for sharing a lot of that information. We have time for one last question, and this question is addressed for Tiara. Can we get genetic screening at Cancer Research Malaysia in Subang Jaya, and how much would it cost?
You have to unmute.
Hello, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So yes, you can access genetic counseling and testing at Cancer Research Malaysia. So for inherited cancer, the cost would be around 1,500 ringgit. Please contact us through our hotline, and we will discuss with you in details the processes and costing with you directly. So I think we have also dropped it in the comment in terms of our hotline. So please, I think better to leave us a WhatsApp message so that we don't miss your call. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Tiara, and all the panelists for participating in the Q&A session. Thank you also for all the participants for all your engaging questions and giving us the opportunity to respond to some of your queries, particularly in this Q&A session. If any of you would really want to stay up to date and keep informed of all the latest developments here at Cancer Research Malaysia, as well as all the fantastic work that Yayasan PETRONAS is doing, please visit our social media platforms and subscribe to our newsletters. You can find all the links that are necessary currently on your chat or right now on your screen as well. Finally, before we bring things to a close here this afternoon, I would just like to invite Puan Nelly, once again, CEO of Yayasan PETRONAS, to say a few closing words before we bring things to a close. Puan Nelly?
Thank you again, Guprit. It's my great pleasure to hear the sharing session today. Before we end, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you for taking part in today's session, as we are given the opportunity to listen to today's highlights on one of the most critical health issues impacting the humankind, and especially women around the globe. It is time for us to reflect upon ourselves and recognize what are the efforts we have made so far to help. We need to acknowledge that there are many challenges that still lie ahead, and it is up to us to change that. It was a privilege to hear from our diverse speakers and panelists today and gain knowledge from their experience. It's definitely not enough. Let's give a big hand to each one of them, Professor Datin Paduka, Dr. Teo, Professor Dr. Aishah, and Tiara. We thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us. At Yayasan PETRONAS, we understand the importance of forging a partnership, and that is able to provide a positive impact to community. Let us applaud these amazing partners for their commitment and continued efforts that has enabled us to achieve these milestones. I also urge everyone to take action against cancer by taking steps to raise awareness of the matter, drawing attention to it, sharing the information we have gained today with others. It may not be you or your family, but it may be the people around you. Your good deed will go a long way. Health screening is an effective way to detect a disease or condition early, even if there aren't symptoms or signs of it. I hope we will all continue to be in the best of health so that we may do our part in making a difference, because together we make change. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Puan Nelly, for that closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, our chances of surviving cancer will continue to increase as long as research continues. Hope is what enables cancer patients to stay strong, to face any amount of obstacles, to endure through any amount of trials. Hope is the anchor of the soul. Cancer Research Malaysia is fully funded by donations. Help us to provide hope and to save lives through impactful research. Our core donors like Yayasan PETRONAS ensure that we have laboratories in Malaysia furnished with all the lab equipments that are necessary so that research can include Asians. But the reality is we need help to fund projects. Please donate to Cancer Research Malaysia. 10 ringgit a month is all it takes. And if you can extend that out to anybody else that you know within your network, up to 5,000 Malaysians to support us, that would be fantastic. Support our work. Cancer is an important cause to fight against, and we really value your support. To cap things off today, here is a quick 2-minute video encapsulating some of the key facts about cancer research and the role that Cancer Research Malaysia plays.
No.
Did you know?
Did you know? Did you know?
Did you know?
Did you know that cures for some cancers do exist?
There are over 200 different types of cancers.
And some of them are already curable.
You could say that researchers have found a way to reverse cancer.
But it didn't happen overnight.
I survived cancer.
I survived cancer.
I survived cancer.
I survived cancer because of medical research
done yesterday.
I believe
To cure more types of cancers tomorrow,
we need to do more research today.
Today.
we are Cancer Research Malaysia, a non-profit medical research organization
Working to reverse cancer.
In as many ways as we can.
In the world of cancer research, there isn't enough.
There really isn't enough focus on Asian genetics
And the cancers that are common here.
We are ensuring that the fight against cancer
doesn't miss Asians,
especially Malaysians.
Like you and me.
like you and me.
But we need your support.
We need your support.
We need your support.
Because we are funded entirely by donations.
we are already working on vaccines to prevent some cancers. Our scientists are using genetics to sharpen diagnosis
and therapy.
New ways to make treatment more accessible to patients.
Projects to reuse existing drugs in new and more affordable ways.
Mobile technology to speed up screening.
in remote locations.
We have started this fight.
We have started this fight.
But there's so much more we can do.
Talk to us.
And find out how science can reverse cancer for our future.
And the future of our loved ones.
And please donate to ensure we finish this fight.
We are Cancer Research Malaysia.
And we are reversing cancer
Through research.
All right, that's all from us this afternoon. Once again, thank you for being a part of this webinar in collaboration with Yayasan PETRONAS. To Puan, Nelly, and the Yayasan PETRONAS team, our deepest gratitude for all your support. And for everyone else, it's been a joy and a privilege to have all of you here with us. We sincerely value your time and hope that you would consider linking arms with us in our fight against cancer. If you have any questions or you would like to be in conversations with us, you can feel free to call our hotline at 012-680-8330 or WhatsApp us at that same number, or you can also email us at info@cancerresearch.my. Until next time, best wishes everyone, and we wish you all the very best and have a good rest of your day.